Before I get started on the topic that I want to discuss today, which is about Israel and the Palestinians, I want to remind everybody to read Edwin Black's article, and if you choose to do so, his book, The Horrifying American Roots of Nazi Eugenics. This article, in my opinion, is sufficient, and I have already done a video where I read this entire article out word for word. The reason why I started with this is I need to do a public service announcement before I get started with this video. It is concerning Moderna's vaccine, or I should say mRNA modifier. Let's go and look at the ingredients. And you can see number of shots, 2 shots, 28 days apart. All right. Oh. Now, ingredients: messenger ribonucleic acid, mRNA, lipids. First one is SM102, and that is short for a long name. So SM102. And once again, SM102 is listed here. Alright, I don't need that anymore. So then, what is SM102? SM102 is made by Cayman Chemical Company. Now this date is April 11, 2021, so it just came out a couple of months ago, the safety data sheet. This is OSHA's Cayman Chemical Company safety data sheet that is required by OSHA. Trade name SM102, and you see this long name here. So let's look at, so we have, it says 2 hazard, or that must be the second page, hazard identifications. All right, it's flammable. The second one is you have acute toxicity. Acute toxicity. Now, I do not have to explain to you what that means. And I think it was Newsweek, it was either Newsweek or Associated Press came out yesterday with an article to try to dispute what was being disseminated around the internet concerning this particular safety data sheet. But I can tell you the safety data sheet is more accurate than Newsweek or the AP. Now, here is the health hazard. Now, oh wait a minute, hold on. Here is the skull and crossbones hazard. Acute toxicity, fatal in contact with skin. If you get too much of it on your skin, it'll kill you. Now, it is a carcinogenic, suspected of causing cancer. It is a reproductive health hazard, suspected of causing damage to fertility or the unborn child. And it also causes damage to the central nervous system, the kidneys, the liver, and the respiratory system through prolonged or repeated exposure. Now this is the one that I want to talk about. Prolonged and repeated exposure, damage to the central nervous system, the kidneys, and the liver. In other words, damage to your central nervous system and your organs. All right? Now, only thing is, as you can see by this PDF file, it is 11 pages long. very toxic to aquatic life with long-lasting effects. It is also an extreme pollutant of the environment. Wash thoroughly after handling. Do not eat, drink, or smoke when using this product. This is what they are injecting into people who are getting the Moderna vaccine. Now, I've had to give this information to my neighbors, especially the ones that were trying to push everybody to get the vaccine. I showed this to them and they suddenly got quiet. No, I'm not going to go through all 11 pages. It would take too long. All right? Now, you saw the now on the Gateway Pundit, Dr. Yancey Lindsay sounds the alarm, halt the vaccine immediately. Why? Dr. Yancey Lindsay sounded the alarm and said it was time to halt the experimental COVID vaccine, or it should be, it's not a vaccine, it's gene therapy. It's not vaccine. That is a lie. Dr. Lindsay exposed the great deception coming from the Fauci-worshipping media claiming antibodies for COVID-19 somehow disappear after a certain amount of months. Well, it doesn't. So what he's sounding alarm about is not even about the SM-102. But I'm sounding the alarm, and many others, about SM-102. Now, this is what I wanted to go over here. Do you remember what we just read? Big Pharma is scaring the public with his big lie in order to convince people to get the COVID booster shots every 6 months. Let's go back here. Wait a minute, that's not it. Did I already get rid of it? Right here. Every 6 months. Causes damage to the central nervous system, the kidneys, the liver, and the respiratory system through prolonged or repeated exposure. Well, getting the Moderna vaccine every 6 months is going to expose you to SM-102 repeatedly. Now, I have to be careful what I say here so that Moderna and others don't come after me with lawsuits, but I think you can make your own deductions and come to your own conclusions. And please, folks, don't forget to read this particular article. Make sure you read the whole thing afterwards. And I think you'll know what you are dealing with. Now on to the subject at hand. Should I do this one first? I'm thinking maybe I'll do this one. ADL CEO Greenblatt, I feel scared, alarmed by the rise in anti-Semitic attacks. This isn't America. I respectfully disagree with ADL CEO Greenblatt. It is America. Why do I say this? Well, because America is a majority Christian nation. This is the legacy of Christianity for nearly 2,000 years. All that has to be done is an event arise that the enemies of Israel will paint Israel as the reason for all that ails the world. And of course, what just happened? Hamas attacks Israel. Israel fires back. And the whole world cries over the poor, poor Palestinians. Anti-Defamation League CEO Jonathan Greenblatt said Friday on MSNBC's Deadline, that's apropos, Deadline, that there has been an alarming rise in anti-Semitic attacks across the nation in the past few days, particularly in New York and Los Angeles. Greenblatt said, "We have seen week over week since fighting in the Middle East started, more than a 50% surge in anti-Semitic attacks here in the United States, from New York City to Los Angeles to Florida to New Jersey to South Carolina, and more and more and more. Incidents like assaults in broad daylight, people chased down and beaten, reports of Southern California of men throwing bottles at homes that had Jewish mezuzah on the doors, and acts of vandalism at synagogue, and just out-and-out acts of harassment, that things being said to people that I can't repeat on the air. We are deeply alarmed by this." He added, I think makes all Jews feel afraid and should make all people feel afraid. This isn't America." And as I said, any country that declares himself a Christian nation, that's what it is. This is America. And I love how you Christians call yourselves Christians, and at the same time, you call yourselves a friend of Israel. It is not possible. That is no different than calling yourself a Lutheran with Martin Luther's past, his book To the Jews and Their Lies, and then turn around and call yourselves a friend of Israel. It's not possible. Because Christianity's legacy proves that Christianity is the enemy of the Jews. I know there are maybe some people first time listening to this YouTube channel, and you can't figure out what I'm talking about. Just read the Crusades. Read about the Crusades, read about the pogroms. Listen to some more of my videos, past videos, and you'll understand what I'm talking about. Calling yourself a Christian and a friend of the Jews is like calling yourself a Nazi and calling yourself a friend of the Jews. Or like calling yourself a Lutheran and a friend of the Jews. Or like calling yourself a Protestant and a friend of the Jews. Go look in the history of Nazism. Go look in the history of Protestantism. Look in the history of Christianity. Look at their history. It's the same as the Nazis. So is it cool to call oneself a Nazi and call yourself a friend of the Jews? No, it's not cool. It's downright disgusting. Same thing with calling yourself a Christian and calling yourself a friend of the Jews. Anchor Nicole Wallace asked, "You've seen a lot and been in that role. I wonder where you place this moment in terms of how you feel. Do you feel scared?" Well, I know how I would have answered that question. The way I would have answered that question is, this is seems pre-Kristallnacht. Greenblatt said, "I do feel scared and heard from people all around the country in the past week, alarmed from college campuses to La Cienega Boulevard in Los Angeles. People are feeling under assault. It is like a Charlottesville every day, driving down the street, targeting Jewish neighborhoods through a megaphone screaming, 'Are you Jewish?' throwing bottles at people. This isn't normal. Au contraire, my Jewish brother, it is normal. It is. Why is all this happening when people have their mouths full? We have been fighting hate over 100 years? Really, Mr. Greenblatt? Oh, just over 100 years? Is that all? Sounds like you need to read your history books too. No. Nearly 2,000 years is how long this has been going on. Wake up, people. And seen in the past, that tension in the Middle East can spawn hate crimes here. No. Things that happen in the Middle East do not spawn hate crimes here. People are looking for an excuse to commit hate crimes, and when they find it, they do like their father, Cain. All right. Jewish man beaten in New York City among dueling protests over Israel and Hamas, police say. A 29-year-old Jewish man was beaten by a group of people in New York City's Times Square on Thursday evening, police said. The victim was treated for minor injuries at a local hospital and released. The incident is now being investigated as a hate crime according to New York City Police Department. One suspect, 23-year-old Wasim Awade of Brooklyn, was taken into custody in Midtown Manhattan on Thursday night. Police told ABC News he was charged with assault as a hate crime, gang assault, menacing, aggravated harassment as a hate crime, and criminal possession of a weapon. The latter charges refer to crutches that Awade allegedly used to beat the victim. I don't know how a crutch would be a criminal possession of a weapon. That makes no sense to me, but anyway. So we scroll down here, and once again they say, we stand with our Jewish brothers and sisters against vile anti-Semitism that would never find comfort in our communities. That's a bunch of bull crap. Anti-Semitism have found comfort in New York's communities for many, many years. Those of you who live in New York, you know this. Those of you who are Jews in New York know this full well. Oh, and here we go. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo announced that he is directing the New York State Police Hate Crimes Task Force to offer assistance in the investigation of such attacks, saying justice needs to be done. He says, I equivocally condemn these brutal attacks on visibly Jewish New Yorkers, and we will not tolerate anti-Semitic gang harassment and intimidation, Cuomo said in a statement Friday. You're a Catholic, aren't you, Mr. Cuomo? Isn't that the legacy of Catholicism's past? Once again, I say, it's like calling oneself a Nazi and then say, I unequivocally condemn these brutal attacks on visibly Jewish New Yorkers. Please, spare me. Anyway, so there was one more thing that I wanted to go to. It slipped my mind. Let me think for a second. I can't remember it anymore. So I guess what I'll go to once again. As I've pointed out, the world is going to, there is something I do need to look up. The world will they will show their true colors when the time is right. And I'm going to make another point here where it says, Putin this is the way I searched it and found it. All right, and it would now it was on the UK, not the UK Daily Mail, another UK website, but others have pulled it, and I don't see it up there right now, so I'm just going to go and what's happening here. Putin told Netanyahu Russia could declare war on Israel amid Palestinian row. That was on May the 18th. And I don't really want to go through this whole article. But just the fact that this threat was issued means that the Christian Russians put the blame squarely on Israel. Now, so I go to let's see here. So you got hundreds gather at protests in Dublin calling boycott of Israel. What is Ireland? It is a predominantly Catholic country. And you can look at these headlines, okay? And you can see that the fake Stinians have really suffered a whole lot because they went and attacked Israel. What was the point of them attacking Israel when they knew that Israel was going to hammer them and hammer them hard? What was the point? The point is to gather and garner sympathy. Aid starts flowing into Gaza as Israel-Hamas ceasefire holds. They're getting sympathy from Ireland. They're getting sympathy from the Nazi squad, is what I call them in the U.S. Congress. And now everybody's talking about rebuilding Gaza. Look at these headlines. Jews are Christ killers banner at anti-Israel protest. Where is this at? Oh, in London. In jolly old England. And so, the Pelasheth is what I call them because that's what the Bible calls them. The folks in Gaza. They did this so that Israel would beat them and pummel them so that the world would give them sympathy. Which is why this is going to happen. And I have gone to this scripture over and over again, and I'll keep on doing it. Joel 3. In the day and time when the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem return, not when all Israel return, but when the captivity of Jerusalem and Judah return, he will gather the Goy and bring them down into the valley of judgment, and will judge them for my people, for my heritage, all Israel, whom they have scattered among the Gentiles and parted my land. And who is he going to deal with first? Well, the first ones are going to be Lebanon and Pelasheth. Tyre and Zidon are in Lebanon, and the coast of Pelesheth. Pelesheth, the coast of Pelesheth would be Gaza, a territory in the south Mediterranean coast of Israel. Gaza. He's going to deal with the Lebanese and the Pelesheth first. Remember, that's how he's going to gather the Goy into judgment. They're going to give sympathy to Lebanon and Pelesheth. But it was Lebanon and Pelesheth who stole Jehovah's gold and silver and carried off the children of Judah and Jerusalem to the Greeks, that you might remove them far from the border. He says, I'm going to raise them out of the place where you sold them. Well, he did. He did. What is the next step? The next step is to recompense exactly what they did to the Jews in Jerusalem, to Lebanon and Pelesheth. It's going to be revenge. They are going to be deported this time. I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hand of the children of Yehudah, and they will sell them to the Sabians, to people far away, because Jehovah has spoken it. And the Sabians lived, they traversed in those days what is now Yemen and Eritrea. Yes, it appears that they're going to be deported to an African country to be slaves to the Africans. Oh, what an outrageous statement to make. How dare the Creator of heaven and earth do such a dastardly thing, they will say. And that is the reason why they're all going to gather against Israel for judgment, against the Jews for judgment. Proclaim this among the Gentiles. Prepare war. Come on. Wake up all your mighty men. Let your men of war draw near. Let them come down. Yes, let them come and take revenge for doing to the Pelesheth and to the Lebanese what they did to Israel. Beat your plowshares and the swords and your pruning hooks and the spears, and let the weak say, I am strong. Assemble yourselves and come, you heathen, you Gentiles, and gather yourselves together all around about, and then cause your mighty ones to come down to Jehovah. Let's bring your angels and your Moshiach too. Let's see who's going to win this one. Put you in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe, and get you down, for the press is full, the fats overflow, because their wickedness is great, and in their wickedness is also hypocrisy. Hypocrisy of the greatest kind. Christian hypocrisy. Multitude and multitude in the valley of decisions, multitudes and multitudes in the valley of decision, because the day of Jehovah's wrath is near in the valley of decision. Yes, I noticed that Lebanon didn't participate this time, but they will. They will. I'm not talking about this time. I'm talking about when the time is right. They're going to do it. They're going to jump right in. I think I know why. I think it will because Moshiach showed up. The sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars withdraw their shining. Jehovah will roar out of Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem, and the heaven and the earth shall shake. Jehovah will be the hope of his people and the strength of the children of Israel. You see the trap that he has set for the Gentiles. You see how, as you read in Psalm 69 and verse 22, it says, "Let their table be made a snare, and let peace and safety be the tripline." The world should know there is no way there can be peace between the Jews and the Pelasheth. It is impossible. And Jehovah ordered Yehoshua, the first one, and the children of Israel to drive out all the Canaanites. And among those Canaanites was Tyre and Zidon, was Lebanon. The Pelasheth, they are Philistines, related to the Egyptians. You will know Jehovah, your Elohim, dwells in Zion. That's his place. You Europeans, you Muslims, you have no authority whatsoever on Zion, Jehovah's holy mountain. It is his holy mountain. It is not yours. You have no authority whatsoever. You do not have the authority to even speak on it, you Gentiles. At that time, Jerusalem will be holy again. And in other words, what it was saying here, the stranger is not going to overrun her anymore. It shall come to pass in that day that the mountains will drop down new wine, beautiful grapes, and the hills shall flow with milk, all kinds of cattle. And all the rivers of Yehudah will flow with water, with springs of water. And a fountain shall come up forth at the house of Jehovah. That would be at the Temple Mount. And shall water the valley of Shittim, a place east of the Jordan. Also a wadi perhaps west of Jerusalem. What's going to happen? Egypt will be desolate, or it should say Mitzrayim will be desolate. That would be in North Africa will be desolate. Edom will be devastated and laid waste because of their violence against the children of Judah, because they have shed innocent blood in their land. As I have mentioned many, many times before, does that mean that Europe is going to get away scot-free? No. You see, the Europeans have shed innocent Jewish blood in their land too. In the name of Jesus, they did. This curse then will fall upon Christian nations as well. If innocent Jewish blood was shed in your land is going to be laid waste. Now I know the Russians love to. Oh, we did right by the Jews. No, you did not. I had an acquaintance in Israel whose parents left Russia for the United States. He lived in California, and he married a woman, an Israeli woman, as I understand, and they moved together to Israel. And he told me, crying over the phone, he told me how the Russians murdered 20 million Jews. But they will never, ever release that information to the public. Well, I'm sure that there are multiples of Jews that can attest to these crimes that the Russians committed against the Jews. These lands will be emptied out. The lands of Japheth will be emptied out. Yes, I said the lands of Japheth, the lands of the Christians, will be emptied out. And as I have pointed out many times, I believe it's in the book of Genesis somewhere. I'll go find it. Genesis 9. Everyone needs to read this very, very carefully. In the beginning, Shem and Japheth were like brothers, but only one was a follower of Jehovah. Let's start with verse 20. And Noah began to be a husbandman, and he planted a vineyard, and he drank the wine, and was drunk, and he was uncovered inside his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and what he should have done right there is covered him up with a blanket and never said a word to his brothers. But that's not what he did. When he spoke to his brothers, he committed an act of disrespect. And he told his brothers outside. And when Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it on both of their shoulders and went backward and covered up the nakedness of their father. That's what they were supposed to do. And the faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness, and Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done to him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. Now, we don't know why he cursed Canaan and not Ham. But one could suppose that maybe Mizraim shouldn't have received the curse in his mind. Or maybe Cush shouldn't have received. Or maybe Put shouldn't have. Maybe it was just Canaan. We just know that Canaan received the curse. But look at how the blessings were divvied out. And read this carefully. And he said, Blessed be Jehovah Elohim of Shem. Did he say Elohim of Shem and Japheth? No. It's not what he said. And Canaan will be his servant. Then he says Elohim will enlarge Japheth. Now, when you read this, it looks like a paradox. It looks like an oxymoron. But those of you who study the Hebrew text, you will know what this means. He will enlarge Japheth. Now it says allure, but it's to be spacious and wide open. In other words, his lands are going to be extremely large. He gets the biggest of all in acreage, in square miles. And you look at Europe, you look at Russia, you look at the United States, and then the colonies in South America. South America is Spanish colonies, and with the exception of Brazil, which is Portuguese colonies. These are all, South America is all Tarshish colonies. Russia would be Rus, Meshech, and Tubal. And Greece, House of Togarmah, Turkey and Greece. You have all of Europe, which would be Riphath, the son of Gomer, which is the son of Japheth, etc. Christianity today is the sons of Japheth. But what is his end going to be? Enlarge Japheth, but he will dwell in the tents of Shem. How is it that he will enlarge Japheth and end up dwelling in the tents of Shem? How? Answer, you ready? His lands will be emptied out because of the crimes that his children committed against the Jews. Shed blood in their land. Their lands will be ruined, devastated, and will be a desolate wilderness because of the violence against the children of Judah, because they have shed innocent blood in their land. It's not going to just happen to Egypt and Edom. You see, the sons of Japheth did not have to act like Egypt and Edom, but they did. And because the Europeans and the Russians did the acts of Esau and Edom, that's the reason why they call the Europeans Edom. I hope you understand this. Japheth starts off enlarged, but ends up dwelling in the tents of Shem. Now, let's see if I can draw an analogy here. So here is a man here, Shem. He has a moderate house. And here you have Japheth. He has this great, big, huge mansion. But he ends up losing it all. And now has to rent a room in the moderate-sized house of Shem. How's that for an analogy? Yes, he has to rent a room from Shem. Now, that ought to tell you what's going to happen in the future, how it's going to happen, and why it's going to happen. So none of you should be shocked when it does happen. You see, these Christian countries, as soon as they get the opportunity, they will always blame the Jew.